Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Mr. Richard Spray. We could dance all morning, let's be honest. I think we're all feeling the party atmosphere and feeling pretty good because, yes, indeed, it was a great night last night. How are you feeling, Richard?
Oh, man, amazing. Now I want Oreos after that song. That's pretty exciting.
I think we are all feeling pretty darn good this morning, y'all.
That's right. Yeah,
That's Nottingham Forest recorded their first home win of the season. Indeed. It was the first home win of the season under the lights at the City Ground. We're going to look back on last night's action that saw Chris Wood score yet again for the mighty Reds, and Matz Sels continue his fine form in goal with a couple of super saves to keep his third clean sheet of the season. Here for the next hour to help Richard and I reflect on the match and more, we welcome channel regular contributor Danscape. Good morning, Dan. How are you?
Yeah, good morning. Feeling good.
Well, you were at the match. You were live and present. Let's jump straight into it in a moment and get your thoughts on that. Just before, please don't forget to join in with us in the chat. Drop your comments. If you don't say hi, then we won't know that you're here. And we do like to give shout outs if we can. And of course, maybe you're out walking the dog right now on your headphones or something similar, and you're catching this episode later, either on Apple or Spotify, or indeed on the YouTube playback. We thank you for joining us too. Today's quiz question, because we do like to post something at the start of each episode. In 1993, Nottingham Forest signed club legend Lars Bohinen from which club? Was it Rapid Vienna or Young Boys? In 1993, Nottingham Forest signed club legend Lars Bohinen from which club? I've given you two choices. Did we sign Bohinen from Young Boys or Rapid Vienna? So have a think about that. If you want to pop your answer into the comments, that would be great. I'll give the answer out at the end. Okay, right. It is the morning before the night. It is the morning after the night before. We're up to 8th in the Premier League. And the win on Friday at Leicester would see us rise to the heady heights of 5th. So let's not get too carried away. Let's think about last night's game first, Dan. Let's come to you straight away. You were there, sat in Upper Bryant Clough. Tell us your immediate reaction on the game that you saw.
Like really nice to just finish at the final whistle and just smile. You know, I thought that at the time. I was just kind of smiling, and it's the first time in a long time that's been the case at the end of a home game. Really, there's been a few disappointments, but that was it. We got the job done. Pretty, controlled win, bit more of a business-like win. Not too. We didn't sort of get too carried away in the game, I don't think. And yeah, we got the job done. Points on the board and great for momentum, like you say, going into this next game at the end of the week.
It's so amazing to think that the three of us were watching the game in such different ways. You were at the game, Dan, live at the City Ground. I'm in Hertfordshire / North London, watching it on the TV. 8 o'clock kickoff, and there's Richard over in Oklahoma, which would have been something like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm guessing Richard probably having to sneakily watch it whilst at work on your desk or something, hoping that the boss doesn't come in and say, "What are you doing over there, man? Come on, get back to work." How was it for you, Richard?
No, it was great. I mean, I was very trying very hard not to get distracted, so mostly audio that's playing in my ear, getting excited at each moment that I could grasp onto it as I was trying to work. But yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, you can't be disappointed with the idea of bucking that trend that we've been on where we weren't getting home victories. So it's great to have that. Obviously there's been conversation about the decibel level of the crowd, and I know, Greg, you talked very exclusively about the idea of what it means to be under the lights and an evening match on a Monday night, and how that should have a different feel to it. And certainly there were moments where it did happen that way, but it definitely seems like our fans are starting to be somewhat reactive to the flow of play versus like proactively trying to lift the team at times. Maybe Dan, you could agree or disagree with that based off of your experience there. But yeah, you can't be disappointed with 3 points. Can't be disappointed leading into Leicester with some momentum and some positivity. Hopefully, if there's any chance, get Morgan back for that match because we'll need him kind of doing what he does. Although it was good to see how Anderson performed, and I'm sure we'll get onto that. But yeah, I was incredibly happy. I mean, I jumped up for joy and screamed and fist pumped as soon as the whistle went. So it was brilliant.
Just be mindful of your mic, Rich, on your
sorry.
I think this bit here is rattling around on your collar.
Thank you.
We're getting a little bit of interference just as you're speaking. I don't want people to be distracted from the things that you're saying. So look, I think I was a little bit nervous going into this one. I'll be honest with you. I don't know why. Maybe because we were playing last, and I thought, we'd built up some good momentum with the results we had this season, and with a nice start, a couple of away wins, as we know, and obviously the home form was there to be looked at. And having the other teams played and seen Leicester all of a sudden creep up onto 9 points, I was like thinking, all of a sudden that good start might be getting kind of caught up on and maybe knocked out of play. So a win would be really good. And we were talking, weren't we, in the WhatsApp group beforehand about what would be a good outcome from not just last night's game, but also the game on Friday night against Leicester. And the general consensus was that, look, 4 points would be great. It means we don't lose. I really wanted us to get the home win last night because we had to get that monkey off our back. That home win was really important. And I think we really deserved it. I think, we absolutely took the game to Crystal Palace and were the team looking to dominate in terms of chances. But let's talk about team selection then, Dan. I mean, we'd been playing around with different formations. Well, maybe not so much different formations, but different personnel, wasn't it? And the big question was who plays in the number 10. I was championing in Jota Silva. Richard had suggested Anderson probably would be the one to play in the 10, and it was Richard that turned out to be correct. So how did you see it, Dan, when you saw the team line up? We were worried about playing all of our midfielders with no fresher legs to come on, and he did go with Dominguez and Yates. So how did you feel when you saw the team news?
Yeah, a little bit surprised. I thought it was going to be Jota after what we discussed in the preview game. I thought maybe he's just going to go for that approach, but I didn't mind either way, really. The main thing for me was seeing that we had Elanga and Hudson-Odoi on there, to give us the outlet and keep them pinned back, especially for their wing backs that can cause them a threat, give them something to worry about. And so overall, obviously the back line kind of picks itself at the minute. And then, it's just that number 10, which I thought, right, let's see what he can do. And on the night, proved he could do quite a lot of different things as well. So no worries when I saw that lineup.
What about you, Richard? I mean, you and I were both with Wolfie on FFTV last Thursday night when we gave our teams, and the team that Nuno selected was in fact the team that you selected. So you got it bang on, didn't you? And we've said that, the difference between one or two players isn't very much. So it's not like we're choosing between very good players and weaker players. We've got a very good squad. But Anderson was in the 10. Sum up for us how you thought he played in that first half.
Yeah, I don't want to get too prisoner of the moment because it's hard with one match that he's played, and we know who's going to be in that position going forward once he's healthy, and certainly not dealing with a match ban either. But I thought he showed himself really well. I thought he moved the ball beautifully. I mean, there was a couple of passes that he had that were absolutely precision. I mean, obviously the on the ball stuff was evident, at multiple intervals, and the way that he kind of managed the flow of the game was done extremely well, and it just continues to prove how incredibly talented he is, and it's scary to think that he can only get better from here, and what he could provide our team, and the continuation of that idea that we've basically stolen a potential England player from Newcastle, which is remarkable, and done so for, obviously there's some questions around the actual numbers in terms of what we paid for him, but seems to be a bit of a steal at this point, financially speaking, in terms of the ROI we're getting. But yeah, he was absolutely phenomenal, and it doesn't change my perception that I think he could potentially be a succession plan to Morgan, as we've stated. I hope he isn't. I hope he is in that 8 role, because I think he operates incredibly well in that role as well. But knowing that we have that kind of versatility, it just continues to speak to what our recruiting has done this offseason, and what we could become as a team. The fact that we maintained possession so well, I think, had a lot to do with him. Not that Morgan can't help us do that, but he definitely did it well last night. Anderson, and having those two guys who have that work rate and that propensity to nick the ball off of players and get things moving quickly, like we saw in Dominguez and Yates was fantastic. I mean, I was almost as excited to see Dominguez on the pitch for an entire match as I was to see Anderson in the 10. But it was definitely my own curiosity just to see, can he do it? I think he proved he can, but at the same time, it's one match. Can't get too excited without seeing more evidence of it.
He definitely proved he can, and I did say to you in the group that at one point I think maybe I do prefer him in the 8, but I removed that comment completely, because he absolutely did play brilliantly in the number 10 role, and he's different to Morgan. We can't expect him to be the same kind of player as what Morgan is. He's not a like for like player, but he's got his own strong attributes. And when he did that wriggly dancing bit of footwork in the penalty box, and obviously got the kind of a scuff shot off that Henderson saved easily, it's in that moment you think, boy, we have got a player on our hands. I was a bit worried, Dan, about us conceding, not in the sense that Palace were putting us under waves of attack and carving out great chances, because they weren't. I was concerned about conceding because we were allowing Eze and Nketiah time to shoot. And let's face it literally was a Carlos Miguel length away on either side of the goal from, it being a goal. We rode our luck. And so should we be concerned about that? Should we be concerned that we're allowing good players to get shots off that on another day whiz into the goal?
I don't think I was concerned during the game. I know Eze was always going to be a threat. I think it's it's good that we're keeping these teams at a distance, right? We're not allowing them to cut us open. They're not, doing a passing move and getting right into our 6-yard box to take their shots. They are almost relying on someone scoring a worldie, like Wolves did to get their point against us. And that's a good thing defensively as a team, that we're kind of keeping people at arm's length. You can't prevent, good players from getting a yard of space and hitting a shot, but they're going to have to be perfect shots. And especially with the form that Sels is now in, even more so, because up until the last couple of games, we've been preventing teams from really having those shots. And then we have been allowing more shots the last 2 games, but Sels has then stepped up and done his job, and is right up there in terms of probably man of the match for this game, because without him, we would have conceded one of those on another day. I think it was a top performance from him to give us the chance to obviously nick the win. So all round, I don't mind that. Yeah, Eze is always going to have chances in the same way that Anderson had chances. You play in that 10 role, you're going to get a few yards and a few shots.
Matz Sels is on my list of things to talk about. So whilst we're with him, we'll continue that, Richard. I mean, he has been a topic of conversation. The goalkeeping department, we've mentioned this time and time again, and it was only a few episodes ago, I think, after the Brighton game, that he was under the spotlight because of the weak wall for the Welbeck free kick and so on, and I was frustrated with him for that. And then other commenters on other pods are really kind of going in hard on Matz Sels, and I'd said, look, I think everyone's getting a little bit carried away with the criticism. He's been okay without being spectacular, not enough to call him the worst goalkeeper in the world and we need to get a new goalkeeper and he's this and he's that. I think the imbalance of comments against him, I thought, were quite evident. And then he's now had 2 fantastic games where he's shown that he can make top saves. You know, he can make the saves of the type of where he's not expected to make. Making saves of the shots you're expected to make is what he should be doing. But when they're coming in like that Schlupp one at the end, that to me was an absolutely fantastic save. So Richard, I know that goalkeepers has been something we've spoken about. Are we looking for a goalkeeper in January, or should we put that to bed completely now, crack on for the rest of the season? The goalkeeper department is sorted. Matz Sels is the number one. Carlos Miguel's backing him up. Whoever is the third is the third. Let's not even worry about a third choice another goalkeeper coming into the club. Where are you at with that?
I would say no. I don't even want to touch it in January, to be honest with you. I mean, unless you come up with something that's so outlandish in terms of the, a worldly type keeper that you'd want to bring in. That's
Bruce Samba was in the crowd last night.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say no to him, obviously, but I think based off of Sels' current form, there's no reason to be concerned. I think he went from, as we were saying, statistically he was incredibly poor last year, even though from a comparison standpoint, he's not, compared to Turner, he was miles better, right? He was infinitely better than what we were dealing with him, and so he just brought a comfort level. But now he's taken it to a whole nother level from a percentage increase in performance. So he went from a guy who's sort of just making an occasional wow save to and making us feel a little bit of trepidation in terms of how he managed set piece play and balls coming into the box on crosses, to a guy who gives you a lot of increased comfort and belief that he's gonna be able to keep a clean sheet every time. And the way that he's operating now, and he's bucking the trend of not willing to attack the ball in the box. Like last night, he came and he punched it out. So he seems like he's doing more of that. He's having a little bit more confidence to do things like that. And so those kinds of performances only make me want to focus more on other areas of the pitch, specifically in the striker position. But because we know we've got to find other goals, because as of right now, Chris Wood's about the only thing that produces goals on our team, and that's a major concern, as you can imagine. And hopefully the other players that step up. But yeah, Sels is absolutely not someone I'd be concerned about replacing in any way, shape, or form at this stage. Certainly not in January.
I've just played around with your mic and seemed to have fixed a little bit of a problem there. So rest assured that it's settled down a little bit. So I know that we were communicating and you were worried about that. So it seems fine. Don't worry. Okay. So first half chances felt we got the lion's share of those, or the better ones, Dan. I know they had those shots from distance we've mentioned, but Chris Wood, a couple of headers, and I had a cheeky tenner on him to score a header. And I thought I had 90 quid in the bag. 8-1 on Sky Bet for Chris Wood to score a header. I thought this is easy money, especially when he had those two like in quick succession. And then there was the Yates header that hit the post. The goal was always coming, wasn't it, Dan? Were you ever worried that we weren't going to score?
Yeah, we should have had the goal in the first half. It kind of came backwards, really. The least likely chance went in, and the others were missed or saved. So Chris Wood had his head in his hands a couple of times, in the ground after those chances, where he just probably thinks he's made the wrong decision. He's gone with his foot when he should have gone with his head, or vice versa. He's kind of just made the wrong decision when he's made contact with the ball. So yeah, it wasn't like a free-flowing game where we were creating a lot of clear chances, but it was Anderson dropping a little bit wider and a little bit deeper, getting on the ball, putting brilliant balls into the box. Exactly the kind of ball you need to put onto a player like Chris Wood, who gets his movement right to give himself a bit of space. When you're playing with the back three, there's going to be a little bit more chance to get some space on those kind of balls, I guess, because the back three don't know which one of them's picking Chris Wood up. So yeah, worked out great for those kind of chances. Not, like I say, it was a little bit hesitant from us at time. I think I said that in the group in the first half. I felt like we had the ball, especially on the left-hand side with Moreno, Hudson-Odoi. They just took an extra little touch and didn't really want to play the ball into the channels or play kind of a hopeful through ball. We were definitely controlled in wanting to retain the possession and not give them a chance to break on us, I think. And that made it look a little bit hesitant, but we created enough to go into the break 1-0 up. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that we definitely deserved to score. And in fact, right at the end, there was that cross that came over that I think Paul Morley, Paul's just joined the chat. Hi, Paul. Good morning. Paul says, loving the 1989 shirt, Danscape.
Right,
Indeed.
It's
classic.
Though,
it is a replica. I know. It still counts. Also, I'll just quickly interrupt myself, say good morning to Mark. He's talking about 20 years ago. In fact, he corrected himself 30 years ago when we did a similar thing, went top of the Prem for 24 hours under a smiling Frank Clark. And yeah, obviously playing first in the next round of fixtures mean we can get up into that high position. But no, right at the end of the game, that ball came across and Paul suggested maybe Woody should have chucked himself at it for a diving header, which would have been great for me. And so we had the chances, but the threat was always there from Palace. I thought to a certain degree. I mean, they're not a bad side. They're not in great form, but they're not a bad side. So we had to make sure that we weren't going to do a Forest and let things slip at the end in our defensive end, and that doesn't seem to be an issue now. I know we talked about it more and more, and what I'm leading up to is Mr. Milenkovic, because yet again, Richard, what a player. I mean, what a player he truly, truly is. It just seems that he is bringing the best out of everybody around him, including the goalkeeper, perhaps. That air of calmness and assuredness. What can we say about him that we haven't already said? Is he really going to be the difference between us finishing 15th, 16th, and maybe finishing top 8?
I mean, it certainly seems like it at this point, right? I mean, he's, gosh, as you put up what you just said, you're running out of superlatives for this guy. I mean, there was a moment too where he seemed like he was getting trapped in sort of to the right side of the pitch, about a third of the way up, and then he just dribbled right out of it and played the ball up to I believe Alanga, and that kind of moment just solidified for me that he's everything that we needed him to be and far more, at this point. So, I mean, I don't know what else you can say about him. It's hard to articulate what we're seeing. His assimilation to the Premier League is phenomenal. I mean, he played in a very physical league, obviously, in the Serie A, and he did so for many years. His track record with Serbia, now as a captain. I mean, there's not a whole lot you can say about him other than the fact that I hope we can hold on to him for another year or two, because it seems like his value is skyrocketed this season. And what he's done for us in terms of how he manages the box and how he keeps us in a position where we feel so much more comfortable at this stage when balls are coming in, specifically on set pieces that we've outlined. I mean, the way that we've transitioned, it's complete 180. It's not even just a percentage of increase, it's complete 180 from where we were last season. And that's making a massive difference in terms of our ability to both keep clean sheets, to win close matches, not to give up things late. I mean, I can tell you right now, I think they were talking about on Forest Focus. Matt mentioned it. Was anybody else nervous? I mean, I think just based off of how we've been the last couple of seasons, when it hits that stoppage time period, that injury time period, I start getting a little bit of trepidation. I start going, uh-oh, here we go. Is something going to happen? Because as you pointed out, Greg, there's a couple of close calls there, right? The miss by Eze, the miss by Nketiah off the edge of the post. So we're very lucky in that way. And poor Palace, unfortunately, it's going the opposite direction for them. But at the same time, yeah, he's everything that we needed in terms of how he plays and as well as how he sets things up and how he functions as a leader in that back line. I'm convinced, even though he had some errant passes last night and didn't have his best game, Murillo, he's made him a better player by virtue of how he operates and the cerebral way that he plays the game. You can see it on the pitch. He's very, very focused and intense, and he's not letting anybody through that back line. And it's just been an absolute revelation for how we needed to be as a defense.
I'm glad you mentioned Murillo, because he was the person I want to come on to next. We all know that he's a wonderful talent, right? I mean, that's without question. So for anyone listening or watching, if we bring up a player and we analyze them and we maybe talk about them not having their best game, or we maybe talk a little bit negatively, dare I say it, about them in some ways, I don't think we're being negative about them. They're a bad player. We want them all to succeed and we love them all. But I don't think that last night was Murillo's best game. And I was a bit concerned, Dan, about some of his passing. I felt that it stood out more last night than what it has done in a couple of other games where his passing has been a little bit off, and some of the choices at times left me a little bit frustrated. So trying to be balanced about him, he's a wonderful talent. I was a bit frustrated with him last night, that's what I'll say, in some of his passing. And whilst I'm certain that Milenkovic is making him a better player, where's this going to go with Murillo now? I guess what I'm getting to, because Last season he seemed flawless. This season he still seems brilliant, but there are some parts of his game that are standing out where he's making those errors. Is he perhaps getting too confident? Is that be fair to say? Do you think maybe his belief in his own ability is too much sometimes?
I don't get that impression. No, I think sometimes it's more that little lapse of concentration. He maybe rushes a little bit to play his default pass that he likes to look for, and he kind of forces it because he's like, right, I can play this. So he looks, and he just doesn't see that threat of someone intercepting it. So he maybe goes a bit too quick with it. I think the Chelsea game as well, he got caught out thinking he had more time on the ball than he did a couple of times. Got caught in possession. So he has had lapses in the last couple of games, but he recovers well from them. That's his strength, is that if he makes those mistakes, he normally catches up, charges down the player. He does something to recover. So I'm not too worried about it. I think ultimately he tries to make those passes so much that some of them are going to go astray. And you're better to have that than have a defender that's not prepared to try it and just going to go sideways and invite pressure on. So I'm not too worried about that. On Milenkovic, I thought just jumping back, I thought that was his best game for me personally, not necessarily stats or numbers, but he just felt like he actually had something to do in the game. Whereas in others, it's almost like he hasn't had that much to do. But what he had to do, he did it well. And what I would say, sort of compare him to, is obviously the season before last. People were saying Felipe, best defender we've ever seen at Forest, and those sort of comments were coming out. And I always had my question marks on Felipe because individually he was exciting to watch. He'd charge around the pitch and he'd win some great tackles. But as a team, I felt like he's not necessarily making us a better defensive unit. We were still conceding a lot of goals. The difference, and what I would compliment Milenkovic on, is that he's come in and he's what I look for in a defender, in that he doesn't actually have to do that much defending because he's in the right place. He doesn't have to charge out and win a tough 50-50 challenge halfway on the pitch. And if he misses it, all of a sudden they're 2-on-1 and you lose a goal. And that's what was always concerning me with Felipe, is it was fun to watch, but not quite as, controlled in the defending. What Milenkovic is doing at the minute is exactly that. And that, I think, is having a really big impact on Murillo, because Murillo's last, mentor would have been Felipe. And he's probably a little bit more of a charge forward, charge around, whereas now his mentor's Milenkovic, and it's all a bit more controlled, and it's working for us. Second best defense in the league.
Milenkovic is definitely an intelligent player. He does seem to be in the right place, and I've spoken about him, and I will speak about him as being Nottingham Forest's best signing in the last 25 years. And the more I see him, the more I'm digging my heels in on that, people. Please do like and subscribe. It really helps us out if you are watching along. Hit like, hit subscribe. Let's help get our numbers up. We're on the pathway, the quest towards 1,000 subscribers here on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, the 5-star reviews are always the kind we like. Okay, thank you for that. Into the second half we go. And I felt the second half atmosphere went a little bit dead. I know that other places have commented that it was a bit quiet at times. At the end of the first half, it got a bit stale, and the second half opened up fairly similar. But let's jump straight to the goal, okay? In fact, let's just rewind myself slightly, because I want to quickly just mention Anthony Elanga. Now, I don't want to go in hard on Anthony Elanga. I don't think he had his best game last night. I know that Richard and we've spoken about that 50 million from Newcastle, and I don't think any other club, including Newcastle, as it stands at the moment, is coming back to offer us 50 million for Anthony Elanga, and that money looks like it could and should have perhaps been taken. He didn't have his most influential game, and that's been apparent in the last 2 or 3, definitely. We needed an injection of pace and energy, and lo and behold, the man with the eyebrows, Mr. Jota Silva, comes off the bench, and automatically it felt to me, Dan, and you were there, that the place was lifted. The whole crowd just seemed a bit lifted up by that. And it wasn't long after that we scored the goal. So talk to us about the impact of Elanga. Talk to us about Jota Silva coming on and his immediate impact on the game, and then take us up to the goal with Chris Wood.
I think for Elanga's a tough one. I think he had the most touches in the attacking third for us, so he was our outlet. His average position was highest up the pitch.
But he wasn't doing anything with it, was he?
No, exactly. He should have been that outlet. He was left up there to be that threat, and he just didn't. He had a couple of chances to knock the ball past the player and just sprint. Is the defender on that side. He was no slouch, but he never fancied it. He took the extra touch. He didn't just go for a one-on-one race to the ball. And if he's not doing that, he can be ineffective. He had that one really good cross towards the end of the first half, I think it was. That on another day someone's arriving there. Chris Wood's arriving a yard earlier and goes in. But yeah, it wasn't his best game. Jota coming on definitely lifted the energy levels. He's a bit like Felipe, isn't he? He's one of those players that's something about him. He does something that just gets the crowd going, and whether that's attacking or defending, he does a bit of both, and it just seems to excite people. The guy in front of me has kind of ruined Jota a bit because he said, I heard him say to his friend that he reminds him he looks like an angry bird, and now I can't not see that for some reason. It made me chuckle at the time, and he's just absolutely ruined him. It's gone from Grealish to Angry Bird now. But yeah, when he came on, high energy, a little bit of chaos. Obviously, should have probably got us the second goal at the end, just as an icing on the cake. Chris Wood's goal, I mean, it's one of those where when you see the replay, it just bounces so perfectly for him to hit it that he's always going to hit it. You'd expect every player to hit it, but some players would try and absolutely leather it and get it all wrong, and he hits it just hard enough, just sweet enough that it obviously finds its way into the corner from a little bit of a goalkeeping howler. But you've got to hit it right to get it on target and see what happens, and can't blame him for having that shot. So just brilliant that it went in and backwards, because his best chances were in the first half, and then he goes and scores that, and it still ends up 1-0. So it works out in the end.
Just goes to show, Richard, something that we've talked about, that Chris Wood scores all kinds of goals, right? He is a man that can score headers, shots, outside the box, poachers, twisting headers against Palace last season. And this was another example of him taking a chance, taking a punt. I'm going to have a shot on goal. I'm a striker. And Dan, you're absolutely right. The way he connects with it is spot on, and give the keeper something to worry about. I do believe that Dean Henderson is a very, very good goalkeeper, but I also believe that Dean Henderson has a problem with shots from distance. I thought that when he was our goalkeeper for 6 months, and I felt that last night it showed that up again. I think it was a goalkeeping error, and when I've watched it back time and time again, I'm still not quite sure what Dean Henderson was doing, because the ball was there to be saved. But I'm not going to complain about it. We got the goal. But talk to us about Chris Wood, Richard. I mean, the turnaround on a player is so dramatic. I'm not saying that people were really going in hard on him when he was first coming to the club, but there were a lot of people, including me, that was like, this is like, let's get rid of this guy. But 15 million now from Newcastle looks like an absolute bargain, doesn't it?
100%, yeah. I mean, I think in the same way we question, Elanga's impact at times is the same way we felt about Chris Wood. He just didn't seem to provide anything once he actually got on the pitch. And then once he got a little bit of confidence, injected into him from having a manager who believed in him and used him the right way, he's completely resurrected his career. And now he's talking about playing until he's 38 years old. Remains to be seen, obviously, but there's nothing to suggest he can't do it, given how he's been playing the last season and a half, or since the latter half of season, or half of the season last year to this point. Sorry, couldn't get my words out there. But in addition to that, I think it's the presence that he has. I mean, he played beautifully. Some link up play. I think he had a give and go with Anderson at one point. He's starting to sort of show at times he can do a little bit more than just be a poacher around the goal. That fox in the box, I think, is what Raf says, and he has a little bit more versatility to him. But I still get a little bit concerned, because if he doesn't score, where does it come from? And that's the problem, as we've been talking about managing his minutes. We've been talking about keeping him healthy for fear of something going awry and us not being able to have success. It's great that we keep clean sheets. I mean, that's always going to guarantee you an opportunity to win. But at the same time, if we don't have anybody on the pitch that can put the ball in the net, then we have issues. So still very much concerned. But yeah, similar to Milenkovic, what else can you say about him? He's been an absolute revelation and an absolute necessity for us being successful over since Nuno came in. So and, you know, scoring on an international level as well. I mean, he's certainly feeling it right now, and you can't argue what the form is, what form he is in. But at the same time, I go, okay, where do we go from here? How much more are we going to see from him in the rest of the season if we have to manage how much time he has to be on the pitch to avoid the potential of injury, the potential of him getting exhausted? So, yeah, brilliant player, phenomenal.
Want to put out a few hellos to those joining us in the chat. Hi, Darren. Darren says we played well enough, kept Palace at arm's length. Can't wait for Friday. The wife and all the family are Leicester fans. You can imagine how bad it will be for me if we lose. Great podcast, guys. Come on, you Reds. Thanks to that, Darren. Really appreciate you watching, your support. Don't worry. The defeat against Leicester is not happening. You're going to be the one that gets to rub your hands together. Don't worry about that. Also, hi, Crypto Rider joining us from FFTV. How you doing, buddy? Martin joining us. Martin Sherlock Holmes. Good to see you again in the chat. Martin, Steve-O, he says that Alanga wants to be on the left like all of our wingers seem to be. Perhaps that is the case. Good morning to you as well, Steve-O. So, yeah, it seems that Alanga might want to be on the left. Callum Hudson-Odoi is the man in possession of that at the moment. But he picked up a bit of a knock. We might have a couple of doubts about Friday for one or two of those players. You know, looking ahead to a game that's coming around the corner super quickly, last in this game week, first in the next game week, with a very quick turnaround. We've got to use the squad right, haven't we, Dan? And we've got James Ward-Prowse going to be available again. Morgan Gibbs-White might be available pending that injury. But now Elliot Anderson has had the game that he's had, it makes you think, doesn't it? You know, if there's any niggle for Morgan, we've now won that first game without Morgan at the club. I think we've gone 8 games and not one, or I think maybe last night was the 9th or the 8th. But we've done that now. And Elliot Anderson has shown, and we know we touched on him before, but we're going to go back to Elliot. Ahead of Friday night, does he keep his place in the 10 position? Morgan Gibbs-White, fully fit, ready to go. You've put together some information on Elliot, I think, that I've put on the screen. If you can describe that for those listening and take us through what you come up with on Elliot. I don't want to do too much of a preview on Leicester. We're going to do one of those later on in the week. But just give us an idea about the impact he had on the game, and should he be keeping his place on Friday?
Yeah, he had a big impact on the game in patches, I thought. And the stats here show that. So this is looking at where he ranks across this game week of fixtures from Friday to Monday night. So there's 306 players that have played in those fixtures, and Elliot Anderson made the most key passes in those fixtures. He's made the most shot creating actions. He's had the most successful dribbles. He's second on expected assists, and obviously he'll be gutted that Chris Wood didn't finish off one of those chances, so he actually gets his name on an assist after that performance. But what I would say is the reason I put the touches in attacking third there, where he ranks 31st, which is still obviously top 10%, but I thought he could have been involved a little bit more in the game, because he's achieved all that. He's had the most key passes in all the fixtures this week, but he wasn't necessarily that involved in the final third. So he's done that with quite a small, input into the game in some ways. And I thought the first 10 minutes, he was trying to work out what to do. He was trying to run the channels a lot. He was trying to be the last man looking at the end of the through ball. And then after 10 minutes, it changed, whether that's him or whether that's Pedro Silva on the sideline, kind of making the change. But he then dropped deeper, got involved, had that amazing dribble. So, that kind of sparked him into life for like a period of 10 minutes where he was then putting those crosses in. But there was periods in the game where I didn't notice him as much. And I think if he could have been more involved, then obviously we probably would have nicked another goal because he was heavily involved. So yeah, brilliant performance from him. And I think he's going to start the game against Leicester. But I think if Gibbs-White's fit, I'm more excited about getting both of them in the team than saying let's have one or the other. I'd rather have Anderson in 8 and Gibbs-White in 10 than pick one or the other of those. So I would still say Anderson's got his job to do in the slightly deeper role. Obviously, yeah. Leicester preview. Cooper knows Gibbs-White inside out, so you could try and spring a surprise on him, but I think I'd go with that. Just while the stats are on the screen, I think one of the performances under the radar was Yates. Again, across this entire game week, he's got the most interceptions, joint second most key passes with a few other players, and high up in terms of creating shots and having shots himself. So I think he had a kind of an under the radar game because he made a couple of errors, but the rest of what he did was also, again, a big impact.
Players make errors in games. That's always going to happen. It's really, really good to see those kind of stats for Ryan, because he is just proving doubters wrong time and time again. If you haven't seen the interview on Forest Focus with Matt Davis, go and find it. It's a great watch. It came out last weekend. Ryan is exactly the kind of character you expect. He's down to earth. He is a bit of an S-house, and I think he knows it as well. And I think he's more than that. He's, key passes. That's key second in terms of key passes out of 306 other people. Is that right in this game week? Yeah. I mean, his criticism a lot of the time was that he just passed it sideways and passed it back. There's always more to Ryan Yates. I think it is about how you coach him, how you develop him. And Steve Cooper did have a part to play in that. We can't deny that. But under Nuno, he's gone up on a level, as a lot of the players have. Really, really interesting to see those stats. And I don't think that it's ever going to be a question that Elliot and Morgan won't play together, because they are both starters. Elliot and Morgan are both going to play. And they could dovetail, one in the 10, one in the 8. They can move and interchange between them. Maybe that would be a way that we develop the team strategy, because they can interchange so freely. We've still got a bit of time left, and so Richard, I wanted to touch on Nico Dominguez, because he was someone who I love, but he is someone that you were championing as someone to start in the game, and we were perhaps thinking, maybe we should keep his legs back, but because he has a habit of going off to us after 60, 70 minutes. Not only did he start, he played the whole game, and I thought he was absolutely fantastic. He does exactly what Nico Dominguez does. So has he now, given the coaching staff, because I'll talk about them as a whole now, with Nuno on the sideline and Rui coming into play, has he given them a whole now, another headache? Because he was not getting selected in people's teams, but he's got a couple of starts now and he's made a difference. Is he starting on Friday?
Yeah, barring I think Morgan being healthy, I think he does, because I think you might want to bring in James Ward-Prowse for an opportunity on the set pieces and so forth, as we've always stated. And he's a very tidy, experienced player, as we know. It makes it difficult. I know that's been the theme with a lot of different situations where we've been pontificating on what's going to be the lineup, just because of the way that we've seen some players when they've gotten their opportunities, they've taken advantage of it, and he certainly did that yesterday. Very pleased with just the way he's just his versatility in multiple positions. He can move back and play deep and advance the ball up the pitch. He can play in a more of a traditional 8 role. He can sort of, like I said, vacillate to a 6, and that was kind of the interesting dynamic that we had yesterday. And I think we were saying that in our chat as well, which is based off of that fluidity of that midfield. And so seeing that unfold, it makes it very exciting to see what we can field going forward, along with Morgan added into the mix. So yeah, I personally, I mean, I think there was some talk about him going to Olympiacos at one point as well, but he ran out of loans, so we couldn't really do that. But I would not let him go anywhere. I think as a depth piece, as a guy who can come in and impact a match, as he's shown, he's too valuable. And we've talked a little bit about how does this offset the need for someone like Sangare to come good, who's a very talented footballer, there's no question, but with the kind of way that Dominguez can play in all those multiple roles, as well as in a 6, while not the same height, not the same physicality of a person like Sangare, he still presents a difficult thing for people to deal with, which is that king of the press, and it was on display last night. And just the way he nicks the ball off of a player, and dispossesses people, and then can quickly transition is so valuable. Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it shows the squad depth and how good we've been in that department with our recruitment of James Ward-Prowse coming into the mix, and Elliot Anderson now playing for us. Sangare and Danilo, 2 injuries, and we wished him well, but we've hardly spoken about him. I mean, the fact that I don't remember seeing anyone saying, "Oh, we're really missing Danilo." I mean, I think he's a great player, and we miss him obviously because he is a great player. But we haven't missed him, have we, Dan? We haven't missed them as much as we would have done last season when we didn't have the depth. It's like Sangare and Danilo are out, but we're just moving on, and the midfield department is just possibly one of our strongest areas, right?
Yeah, I think I did say in in the preview that we missed Danilo in that Fulham home game, actually. But
Okay.
I think we did miss him there. I think sometimes his ability to drive forward, just because he's just so quick and he can get round a defence and break a line that way. So we sometimes miss Danilo, definitely. Dominguez, I sort of wish we saw more of him on the, the behind the scenes videos and things like that. I don't feel like I know anything about him as a character, and not really seen him interviewed, anything like that. He seems quite a quiet player. He just does it all on the pitch, but kind of keeps himself to himself even on the pitch. He's saw him a few times towards the end when he was tiring, going down on the ground, and Yatesy was going over to him, quickly and like picking him up, like, come on, let's keep going. So I'd like to know more about him as a character and what he's like as part of the team, which we don't see. So maybe he's a little bit quiet, and that's why he doesn't always, come in as first choice for Nuno. Whereas Ward-Prowse is a little bit more trusted player that's going to communicate more and work with the rest of the team a little bit more. So there's reasons, but he was brilliant. Yeah, brilliant last night. Just incredible energy. So always great to have players that will give 100% when they come in. That's what we've got a lot of at the minute.
Indeed. Kingdom of Boxing, that's a great tagline. It says, I've been saying it, so I imagine that's calling out for Danilo and Sangare and the like. And yeah, I'm sure there are people that have said, oh no, you're right to say that in certain games, the attributes that Danilo's got, I don't think anyone moves as well as him from that midfield in terms of like pace and energy, and link up play with Gibbs White is really good. But Paul talks about the fact that we're going to be overloaded in January. So assuming that Danilo and Sangare are back, that if everyone's fit, then we are going to have too many bodies for those spots. But we know what football's like, and injuries come around and suspensions come around, and we've had to deal with all of that. So I suppose we'll just have to cross that bridge when we come to it, and I'd rather have too many players than not enough. Steve-O says Dominguez can be very good, but also very bad. He's been hot and cold. Yeah, he's had a couple of games. I was at West Ham last season when he didn't have the best game. He was hooked at half-time. There's been another couple of games where he's been less effective, but he's got his attributes that were on show last night for everyone to see. It's clear to me that he is still a great player and has a lot to offer to the club, to the team. The last 7 minutes of the game was an added time situation, and we talked about being 1-0 up and are we going to concede? Are we going to let it slip away? But I just thought we managed the game really well, Richard. And with the likes of Williams coming on, who always injects energy and always injects enthusiasm, again, it just demonstrated that the bench options are great, and Taiwo getting some minutes as well. So seeing the game out, managing the game at the end, was there any point in that 7 minutes that you thought, oh my God, we're gonna concede here?
No, nothing springs to mind at this moment.
No.
I was a little bit surprised by the fact that I think they were mentioning it on the broadcast too, with regards to why were we not keeping possession more? We seemed to suddenly sort of shift, even though Morata came on, and we thought, okay, we're going ultra defensive here. We're going to keep we're just going to keep the ball in the box, or at least if it gets in there, we're just going to boot it up the field, and just go for a clearance, sort of perpetual clearance situation. But they didn't do that, which I thought was odd, considering I think we dominated possession by at least 2%. So it was a bit strange to see them not want to just kind of, because I'll be honest, to me, it looked like Crystal Palace lost a little bit of gas towards the end of the match. So it felt like we had an opportunity to control it and just truly like see it out. But yeah, there was never a point at which I could remember vividly where I felt like, oh goodness, here we go. Even on a corner or anything of that nature, it always seemed like we controlled it. We didn't seem like we were getting nervy. We were getting in a position where we might give one up. Certainly with the way that Sels played. I mean, that save, even though I think Kamada was offsides, man, good grief. That successive series of saves were phenomenal. Shades of Bree Samba, I think, against was it Sheffield United in the playoffs. So yeah, it was incredible to see that we just don't seem to have that in us this season, which I hope that doesn't change, because I don't want to see that happen again. I think that's just the way, the cohesion and the sort of unity we have on this team, and they know where they are, they know where they're supposed to be spaced, they know where they're supposed to be positioned. It just seems like things are set up a lot better than they were in previous seasons.
And a word from Morata as well, actually, because he's being introduced regularly now to come in and Steve-O's right. As soon as Palace went 4 up top, Nilo went back 5, and that seems to be the way he likes to see games out. And Morato coming on, Dan, is just slotting in nicely alongside Milenkovic Murillo. No frills. I'm not saying that he's like a hoof-it player or a donkey, because I don't think he is. But he's coming in, he knows his job. Nuno is choosing to firm things up and hold on for the win. And I agree with Richard. I don't think at any point in that 7 minutes I thought, well, we're really under the cosh. In fact, for a good 2 or 3 plus minutes of that, we were up in their penalty box and we were playing it right in the right areas. So Morato, he's come into the club and he's made cameos, but he's contributing, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, we're yet to concede when he has come on, which is obviously the main stat that we need to know.
Right.
So he's been brought on to do a job, and he's doing it. I'm just looking at how many minutes he's actually played so far, and it's like 50 minutes, something like that. So in those 50 minutes that he's been on the pitch, we haven't conceded. So job done, and it's a perfect way to introduce a player who's new to the league and the style of football and all that. Is just let's give him a 10-minute stint to get used to it. Obviously, they had Mateta on, who's a beast when you see him in the flesh. So it made sense to go for that extra tall, strong, defender at the back there. Shame it wasn't Willy Bolly, but Morata's doing his job. Fantastic.
We're just about out of time, guys. But I want to quickly say that Forest women, they won on Sunday in the Cup, 6-0 against Peterborough women. So that's their League Cup. They're now into the last 8 and they're going to play Middlesbrough away on December the 1st. I don't think they've got a game this weekend. So I think their next match is the Women's FA Cup match away at Boldmere St Michael's women. That's just inside November. I think that's the 3rd November. I didn't write it down if I remember rightly. So the women's team doing well as well. We've been following their progress and we will continue to do that as well. We put out an episode, the one with Gary Cumberland, last Saturday. For those that didn't see it, please go and find that one. It was a really great episode with a Forest fan based over in Arizona. His website, thecityground.com. If you haven't checked it out already, then you need to, because believe you me, it is an absolute treasure trove of stats and facts about Nottingham Forest. I'm going to put the link into the comments for everyone to go and see that. So check out Gary Cumberland's website, thecityground.com. If you've got anything you want to know about the club, then that's the place to find it. Believe me, it's absolutely wonderful. I want to give you the answer to the quiz question as well. I asked you earlier, in 1993, Nottingham Forest signed club legend Lars Bohinen from which club? Was it Rapid Vienna or was it Young Boys? Richard, we've discussed this already. So do you know, Dan, was it Rapid Vienna or Young Boys?
It's just a guess. I'm going to go Vienna, I think. But
it was, in fact, Young Boys. There you go. It was Young Boys. Lars Bohinen was signed from Young Boys of Bern in 1993. Okay. If you're watching along, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you with us. Richard Spray over in Oklahoma. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Oh, quick shout out to Bruce from Texas.
Sure.
He was supposed to come on. Unfortunately, couldn't make it. He was in transit back to London, but he came over from US to go see the match. So there's a running conversation between us and Forest all over that we're going to start an offshore account to bring him over for every single match, because clearly he's the good luck charm that we need at home. So Bruce from Texas, well done, buddy. Contributed well to that victory.
Yeah, Bruce, we'll have you on another time. We were hoping Bruce would join us on today, but we'll get him on at some point. He's now in London. I think his good lady wife, he's dragging him around for the last few hours of their trip to look at the sites as well. So enjoy that. Danscape, as ever, been a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
No, thank you for having us. A lovely week ahead.
It is a lovely week ahead. We are going to look forward to the next game, which is coming up on Friday. We'll be going with a Leicester preview show on Thursday. Details of that will be released in good time. Please like and subscribe. Follow us on all of our channels. It's been a joy, as always, to come on after a match where we've won. It's 3 points to the Reds. It's 8th in the table. This is Talking Reds, and we'll see you